Ooh, I built something great again.
Remember this big charcuterie board I built not too long ago, and I really loved it. I've been using it a lot since then. However, honestly, I'm a little bored of it by now, and I need to spice it up a bit. You might have some old charcuterie boards and cutting boards laying around that need some change as well. So follow me and lessons anfangen.
There's dirt on my hands, strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand.
I started a project by taking the hardware off the boards, including the rubber legs that I had attached to the bottom of the boards. Make sure you keep the pieces together somewhere. I always end up placing the pieces in the way and keep moving them around throughout the project. And then I end up losing some of the screws. So do yourself a favor, save some time and place them somewhere that you won't need to move them on later. Then I started the design part of the project. I wanted to have a branch and leaf design with a butterfly, and I wanted it to stretch over most of the board to cover the surface nicely. Once I had a design figured out and had the dimensions, I went to my computer to start on the design. I used Vectric for the drawing. I put in the dimensions and then I started on the branch and butterfly graphics. It's pretty simple to create vectors with this program, but it's very expensive. There's also a few other softwares that are much cheaper or even for free that do the same work. I had purchased it a few years ago since I really wanted to get more into CNC and designing, and back then it was one of the few softwares that actually made it simple to create 3D relief designs. I strapped a piece of lumber onto the machine bed, loaded a file into the cutting program, zeroed a bit, and then started the cutting process. I love looking at the machine do its thing and cut out the design I created. It's a really cool thing to see it come alive. I also found a few other pieces of lumber I had laying around and I decided to engrave them as well. As for the walnut cookie, I had to level it first before engraving the design, but again, that's simply done with the CNC machine. Now we are talking about real walnut here, and it's expensive and beautiful as it is, so I wanted a design that still lets the beauty of the walnut shine through and not cover it fully. So I thought this butterfly that explodes into flowers would be the perfect fit. By the time the machine had leveled the piece, I was ready to load the design into the cutting software. I pushed the machine pretty hard by cutting a significant depth all at once. With it being end grain, it's much tougher to cut. I had to slow down the bit a bit, so it did leave a few burn marks. But that's okay, since I will sand the surface later in the process and it will remove all of the marks that were left. And now let's skip to my favorite part. It's time to fill the design with resin. Use gloves and a respirator or work in a well-ventilated area like I did. I'm using ultra clear resin because it's VOC free and that makes it much more comfortable to work with. They recently had a sale going on and I stocked up on all the goodies. I hope you did too, because it's so much fun to work with this resin. I have not encountered any issues while working with this brand. It dries rock solid, clear, bubble-free, and does not yellow over time. And best part about it, it's made in the USA. This resin has a 1:1 ratio. Make sure you measure it correctly, otherwise resin will not cure properly. And then let's mix and have some fun with it. Once properly mixed, I started pouring the resin into the shape. Make sure you pour slowly so the resin can find its way into the grooves. This way you will end up with a bubble-free fill. Another great way to fill in small lines is to use a heat gun to heat up the resin. This will make the resin thinner, and it easily will drain into any gaps and fill them up. I wasn't sure about the color combination I wanted, but after filling in half with white, I decided to fill in the other half with a light green mica powder, and then have them flow into each other. I thought it would give me an interesting effect paired with the dark of the walnut. Then I used the heat gun again to make the resin thinner so it can pop any bubbles and flow into each other to make a nice transition in between the colors. And then I left it to dry.
It's 2 days later now and the resin has fully dried. As you can tell, it's rock hard. When you pour resin, sometimes it tends to shrink a bit, so I always like to over pour everything, and as you can see, it's all over the place. But it's not a problem because the sander will take it all off very quickly. Here's another close-up of the butterfly. get the sander and sand off any excess. And most importantly, let's have fun with it.
Eso me calma, yo lo sé bien. Tú bien lo sabes. Tú bien lo sabes. Oh, con bebé. No van así que tiene. Baila pego por cienes.
Once sanded smooth, it's time for the finish. I'm using MeikeMade liquid hydration wood oil, finished by a layer of Moose Magus wood butter for a beautiful, food-safe finish that extends the lifetime of your creations. Simply pour on an excess amount of oil and let the wood soak in as much as it likes. Let the wood soak in for a few hours or overnight, then take off any excess and apply a thin layer of Moose Magus wood butter in circular motion. Let it dry for 10 minutes and then come back and buff it. You will end up with a beautiful satin finish. This is how the design of the other board came out. As you can tell, I decided on a sleek black fill that will go perfectly with all the black hardware. I added the oil to the board in the same fashion as the other board. Then I reattach the hardware, starting with the rubber legs. You should probably wait until the oil has soaked in before you attach the legs, but I did not want to wait, and that's okay. Currently it's around 103 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and the workshop isn't any cooler, so I'm suffering. So I'm trying to finish up this project to jump into the pool to cool off. And that's the last screw. That means we are fertig. It got hot in the end, but we are all done. What do you think? Do you like the project? Please like, comment and subscribe. If you haven't done so, please click the bell button to get notified of new videos. If you can, please join my Patreon. This helps me create more YouTube videos. Also stick around for an update on those eggs that I recently hatched. Or at least try to hatch. So about a month ago, I got some chicken eggs from a friend who has a rooster as well. She gave me a dozen eggs and I decided to try to hatch 4 of them. And then a few days later, I had a school of quail walk through my backyard. As I left, I noticed there was a blue egg left behind, me thinking it's one of those Celadon quails that lay blue eggs. So I added this egg into the incubator with the chicken eggs, and then the chicken hatched and ate the quail. No, just kidding, that's absolutely not what happened. With my luck, I grabbed the 4 chicken eggs that were not fertile, and none of them hatched. Also, I did some comparison and got some comments on my last video that hinted me into the direction that the egg isn't actually a quail egg, but rather a robin's egg, which is illegal to keep. Anyhow, I did get some development in the robin egg, but then it stopped moving and I noticed very quickly it had died, which is really sad because I really wanted to give that little guy a chance. I even had a wildlife rescue on speed dial once the bird would hatch. Fast forward, I decided to give all of the eggs a burial and feed my tomato plants with them, because I heard eggs are good for tomatoes. I placed the eggs into a container and then I tried to lift one of the chicken eggs out. At that point, a robin egg popped open. I placed the bird into a shallow grave in my garden bed where it will feed my plants. I love my garden and I think it's a perfect place for the little bird. I have some beautiful sunflowers growing that are already taller than me and look up into the sky. And that's my sad little hatching attempt story. Now, see you next week. Tschüss und auf Wiedersehen.